Snaps good, holds good, kick on the way by Conradi, end over end, and it is good! Kyle Conradi hit a 54-yard field goal, and Iowa State leads it 20-19! Oh my goodness!
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a special episode, a Big 12 championship preview of the Iowa State Fan Perspective. As always, my name is Jake. I am your host tonight, joined by my co-host, my brother Justin. Each and every single week, we bring you guys Iowa State previews, and this week is, Justin, in our short podcasting career, I think it's the biggest one we've done so far. But you know what they say, isn't the biggest one always the next one? Hopefully we have another one that we can get to.
That might be true.
We can get to later on in the season. Really excited to dive into this tonight. If you're new, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, comment below. We will get to our Big 12 title prediction at the end, like we always do each and every single week. And as always, our video is partnered by our friends at No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. If you're an Arizona State fan and you guys found us here, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. No Rivals has a hat for you. This is the best hats in all of college sports. Go check these guys out, shopnorivals.com. Using the code PTFS at checkout gets you free shipping. Iowa State fans, do your job every week. Request a team. We will get hats by next year. I'm just speaking it into existence at this point. If you're familiar with us, you know our prediction segment at the end is always partnered by our friends at No Rivals. If you guys let us know who's winning this one between Iowa State and Arizona State, comment your score prediction. If you guys go 2 for 2 and you subscribe to us here, Play the Fight Song, we will get you guys a hat at shopnorivals.com. We have at least one guaranteed opportunity to get the score prediction right left, Justin. Maybe a bowl game or a college football playoff game.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll have a postseason game. Come on.
I suppose we'll have a bowl game, I guess. But so you get 2 guaranteed more opportunities to try to win a hat at No Rivals. So you might as well let us know and who's going to be your title winner. All right. Lots to get into. Iowa State finally does it. They get to the 10-win mark for the first time in school history. Justin, you were a part of the 55,000 strong yesterday.
Tell us how you said it was.
I don't know. I feel like it had to be between 50 to 50,000 or 55,000. Did it feel that way?
Yeah, and honestly, it felt pretty packed. Like the energy was still pretty high. There was no one there for tailgating. Me and my group got there about 1 o'clock, and I think we were the first ones in the parking lot. Not a whole lot of people there tailgating and getting warmed up like we were. But yeah, by the time kickoff came around, it seemed pretty full and the energy was pretty high. So that was good to see.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people in warm-ups with their shirts off. You know, the Iowa State players were warming up through drills with their shirts off. And then I had a text or a Snapchat or whatever with, I guess, you and some of your buddies with your shirts off warming up as well for a big game. But I mean,
well, it wasn't just me. I mean, I got a video from you first, so it wasn't as cold as people were making it seem to be. I mean, we've been to a lot of cold games. I mean, it wasn't warm by any means. We had to dress accordingly, but it wasn't that bad.
How was the wind? The wind, Midwestern wind, wasn't there because, like, yeah, I was obviously in the Midwest and in my backyard without the wind, and the sun was still kind of shining around 4:45 or whatever it was. I was like, man, this is nothing. You put a couple of hand and toe warmers, and I think you're good to go. And I don't know, it definitely felt like that last night because the crowd was awesome, don't you think?
Yeah, I think a lesser amount of people had more to do with students being on break than there was like the cold, because that really wasn't too bad. That was kind of unfortunate that they couldn't have a full packed out student section for a game like that. But I thought the fan base as a whole still brought really good energy. I know I saw that little Hassel video, Chris Hassel beforehand, talking about how Cyclone fans are going to bring their nervous energy onto the game. And we've definitely had games like that, especially some of the Iowa games that we've had in Jack Trice. But that wasn't yesterday. I mean, even though the game played out like it did, where some of those fumbles went our way, it's not like the fans were ever nervous or anything. And it was like, for some reason, it felt like a game we were expected to win. And a lot of people I kind of felt like they cheered like that accordingly.
I don't know how I would have been if I were to be in the parking lot yesterday heading into the stadium.
Drunk.
But
You'd have been drunk.
maybe a little bit there. But as far as nervous or excited, yesterday going into it, just kind of 20, 30 minutes. I mean, I was excited for the game clearly, but yeah, I never really felt an angst or a worry or any, like, I don't know, stress about it. It was,
Yeah, go ahead.
To be honest, I felt more nervous at a lot in the opportunity last week at Utah, just because yesterday was massive just for the program and everything that it meant. But for Iowa State, just to have the opportunity, I think is what, at least for me, relieved the stress. I just wanted Iowa State having the opportunity to host Kansas State with 10 wins on the line, with the opportunity to get to the Big 12 title. That was where I was like, I just didn't want it to be blown against Utah. That's why I was like, man, we can't blow this. We can't blow the chance at what we might have next Saturday. Once Saturday came around, I think everybody, players, fans, everyone in general was like, let's fucking do this. Let's ride.
Yeah.
Let's go at it. I don't know how is that how you felt?
Yeah, it was. And that's something we touched on last week too, after that Utah game, because there was so much pressure on Iowa State going to that game. And this Kansas State team is a far better football team than that Utah team. I think Kansas State was probably the best team we played all year. That team was really good. Even though the score came out the way that, I was still pretty impressed by them. But it was very businesslike from Iowa State, from the players, from the coaches, through everybody, even though that was a team that if we play them 10 times, who knows how it shakes out. But we just kind of had the mindset that we were going into that game, we were going to win, and they found a way to get it done.
Absolutely. We'll dive into the entire Kansas State recap here in a second, but we got to give a shout out to our first commenter of the night, representing the Forks. He says in the comments, ASU is going to cook the corn. Is that all anybody associates Iowa State as our corn? I mean, that's fine. Fair enough. But we appreciate you joining us. We will get to the Arizona State Sun Devils in the preview to that here in just a minute. Go check out our friends at shopnorivals.com in the meantime. Get you guys a sweet hat for the Big 12 title game. But we have to dive into the Kansas State game, Justin, for a multitude of reasons. Arguably one of the biggest wins in Iowa State history. Iowa State again reaches 10 wins for the first time in school history, beating Kansas State 29-21. Do you know if this is confirmed? I saw a tweet that said, did we hold Kansas State to 1 yard in the fourth quarter? Did I see that right?
I saw that too. I think Williams posted that. I don't know if it's on Twitter. It's got to be true, right?
Well, I mean, now that I think about it, you have the safety in the fourth quarter. When they did get the ball back after we missed the field goal, they lost yardage. They were like on 4th and 15. So I know they didn't get a yard on that possession. I guess, it is crazy to see that. And I know a lot of people, the TV commentators were like, where's DJ Giddens? Why isn't he in the football game? I don't think he got banged up, but I've watched Kansas State enough this year. For some reason, he just doesn't play a lot in the fourth quarter in some certain games, like the Colorado game. I don't know if he got banged up in that one, but I remember not seeing him much in that fourth quarter comeback as well. Weird scenario, just being a one-score game and not relying on the run. I think that was what, Justin, that stood out to me the most. Maybe one of the stats that did is you held DJ Giddens to 72 yards. And we'll talk about running backs, and we'll talk about the running back we got to play this weekend. But Iowa State's seen a lot of good running backs this year. Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Taj Brooks. I believe all three of those guys got to 100 yards. Devin Neal got to 100 yards as well. You finally held the top 15 rusher in college football to under 100 yards last night. And there's a lot of people to be credited for, but that to me stood out the most.
Yeah, holding him under 100 and I mean, Avery had 64, but his over-under before the game was 64.5. So consider that.
Was it really?
And yeah, it was. So you consider that and under as well. I mean, we got to start there. We got to start with the defense. I mean, that was that the best game the defense has played all year?
I'm pausing just because I really do want to give an honest answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. It's got to be up there.
I think so. I really do. First of all, you haven't done this all year. We're pretty known to giving up opening drive touchdowns.
Yep.
What do? First play off the bat.
Fumble.
Granted, not necessarily your own. It was kind of offensive player error by Avery Johnson, but still, you get a fumble right off the bat. That was huge. I think that set the tone for everybody. We talked about nervous energy. I think that relieved a ton of nervous energy, if there was any, just off the bat, getting a forced fumble. You had a blocked 21-yard field goal kick. You had another fumble and a safety. Justin, we said last week you got to get to the magical number 3 in turnovers. You got to 2, but between the safety and the block kick, I mean, that's worth points in itself. So technically counted. You got to 3.
They had a turnover on downs as well, so you can count that too. Pretty early on they did. So,
Great point.
mean, yeah, if they're not, like we talked about before the game, this is the first game Kansas State has lost where Johnson hasn't thrown any interceptions. And that was the biggest thing for me is I thought, outside of that first pitch fumble, I thought he played a really good game and Iowa State was still able to win. If you would have told me before the game he was going to play that well and have that kind of stat, that like box score for the night, I wouldn't have said we wouldn't have been close, although we still won by as much as we did.
Yeah, I have to bring this up because it was funny. I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast recap. I'm sure, I don't know if you've listened to their episode today, but they're touching on this game and the duel between Avery Johnson and Rocco. The game kind of lived up to the hype, but I think the duel between those two quarterbacks, it was a tough night for both of them. I think
that was kind of both of their seasons overall, I thought, though.
Yes,
they were plays. They both didn't quite live up to the hype that I feel like they had going into the year, but they both had good seasons in their own right, especially Rocco, because we've talked about that where, Rocco wasn't the All-American player that we thought he could have been this year, but when it mattered, he was there, and that was the same with the Iowa State team this weekend.
Absolutely, but to finish that, they were like 25 of, I think it was 25 of 65, something like that. So
that's great.
But like you said, both of them made plays when it really mattered most. Let's stick on the defense just a little bit. What has been, in your mind, I have a couple of things in mind, but what do you think has been the difference going back to that Kansas game? What's been the difference in the success that this defense has had in these last few weeks?
Well, it's got to be Big 95. It has to be. That was one of our biggest struggle points all season. We weren't getting any pressure on the quarterback, and he's looked like a first-round draft pick in the last 3 games.
He's got to be. He's getting up there as like a top. I'm gonna say top 10 player of all time for me. I'm not gonna be bold enough to say 5 yet, but he has been absolutely massive. Also, Zamir Hawk has been huge as well. Just he doesn't play nearly half the amount of snaps, but he wasn't getting the snaps that he was earlier in the year. We kind of touched on him a little bit in the preseason, but just being a big presence in the middle on some of those down to give Dom and JR, who is also nice to have back, some of those resting periods was just huge for Iowa State. We do got to go to Leroy here in the comments. He says Iowa State is the Cinderella story. Just keep underestimating them. Leroy, I said on our Play the Fight Song live Wednesday show last week where we cover all college football, I said that I think they're the team of destiny. And the guys kind of laughed at me and whatever, but I like to refer to them as the team of destiny. But
on that note, I feel like there's so many like underdog stories this year with like BYU, Arizona State being one of them. All these teams playing well above their records, and maybe it's because of a thing like the respect that the national media has for Campbell. But I don't feel like nationally anyone's really talking about Iowa State that way. This was a team that when FanDuel first released their over/under for wins this year was at 6.5, and they just set the record for most wins in program history. Cinderella story. It's just something that hasn't really been talked about. It's not really the way Iowa State carries themselves either, which is a cool thing.
I don't know about Cinderella story, but to have Arizona State and Iowa State being in the Big 12 title, I think is just the Big 12. Iowa State was preseason top 5 or 6 ish.
You're like at 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah. And then obviously everybody knows Arizona State was second to last or last in some spots. So I think it's just the Big 12. But to finish up on the defensive point, for me, the linebacking core of Jack Sadowski, Will McLaughlin, and Jacob Ellis, who returned yesterday in a knee brace, I saw, has just been huge. I do want to give credit to guys like Bo Goodwin and Rylan Barnes, a couple of like freshman Iowa guys who just stepped up when it mattered most, when they needed them this year. But to be honest with you, it's just been a much bigger upgrade with some of the veteran leadership that, especially like with a guy like Will McLaughlin stepping in there and making some of the plays that he has really just been monumental. So even just, and those guys, those three aren't even like your projected starting linebacking core in the beginning of the year. You're still missing Bacon. You're still missing Lovett. I might be missing another one. Cooper Ebel did play last night. He played well, but it's just like, I think you can give a credit to the front seven and how much better that they've been playing, Justin, because last night, texted you before the game, word obviously, Malik Verdone didn't play. And I would argue he's, just because of the defensive style that Coach Haycock plays, he is probably top three most important players on that defense. And a lot of other guys stepped up.
I mean, anytime, Verdone, Cooper, or any of our big-time secondary players were out last year, it was usually a death sentence for us. It was pretty easy. You could just spot, like, that's where we fell. And, I mean, credit to the defense as a whole this whole season. You just talked about the linebackers. And, I mean, just to have guys step up and that next man up mentality to actually execute it has been really cool to see from this Iowa State team.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Did you get in the stadium to watch the senior night, kind of whatever you want to call it, senior walkout?
No, I did not. We had a pretty big like tailgate setup with like a tent and a tarp and stuff to keep ourselves warm, and that was kind of a hassle to get put away before the game. So we still made it in beforehand. We got in with like 10 minutes before kick, though.
That's fair. I guess we want to talk about the offense, I guess, a little bit. Everything in my notes
we can touch on it.
Has defensive highlights, because I mean the defense won you the football game yesterday, right?
Of course.
You miss a tough kick. I was really hoping Kyle was going to make that one, because I think, Justin, you asked me last week on the Fan Perspective. He said, will Conradi bounce back? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I thought he was going to make a bunch of big kicks when it mattered most this week. He made a couple. He made a nice.
I still thought he played well.
But yeah, I wish that would have went in just for him and his confidence and whatever.
From the stands, I thought it was in.
Yeah. But
I started celebrating and then like didn't go in. I was like, oh, okay. Guess I'll sit down.
Iowa State, I believe their first two possessions, first two scoring possessions was like a 40-yard drive, 30-yard drive. You took advantage of some of the short field stuff. You didn't put together a full kind of length of the field drive up until the possession where Abu Sama had one of the plays of the year, as he always does with some of his video game like stuff. And that's been moved
to get that into the intro for the next game.
Yeah, I think that might be in our next intro. But any kind of questions or like, I guess, concerns with where the offense is sitting at right now, or even like Rocco? Or do you think a lot of it was just, I know we're an Iowa team or a Midwest team. How much do you think had to do with the weather?
I don't think it was a weather thing. I was pretty frustrated.
That's just Cam. He's just telling the Arizona
gotcha.
State fans. If you're watching us on YouTube, we like to put up your comments here in a while. So let us know where you're from and give us your comments.
I don't really think it was a weather thing at all. I was pretty frustrated with how we did on first and second down. I mean, credit Kansas State's defense too. They were tackling really well, but I just thought our play calling was really vanilla on first and second down, and they're putting Rocco in really difficult situations. Like we had so many third and longs, and I mean, a lot of those were pretty tough to execute, but they executed when it mattered. I thought both the running backs, Sama and Hansen, ran really hard. I mean, all year, even though those guys haven't been putting up flashy stats, I still feel like they run hard every game, and being able to alternate between the two of them is so big for that team and for them to just stay fresh. And yeah, I guess we've been talking about it the whole season. Like, as long as we don't lose the turnover battle, if we can play that clean style that we want to, we're going to win games. And that was kind of just the game script that was going on yesterday. And I thought the offense it did what it needed to. We still had Higgins and Knowles step up, get those 2 touchdowns. Those guys are always going to be there for us, which is something super underrated. I think we're really going to miss those guys next year. So it was good to see them both get a touchdown, kind of cap off their regular season on senior night. But
Jordan
Not a lot
let
of
us
complaints from me.
Jordan let us in the comments. He said Rocco looked far from confident, and he thought the running backs looked good. I personally, I kind of disagree, just because if you've watched Iowa State pretty much all year, that was the epitome of a Rocco Becht game. It's not always perfect. He didn't have a pick or anything. Like, I'm trying to think. There was no. We didn't have any turnovers yesterday either.
And maybe if there is a confidence issue, I think he knows that if he doesn't turn it over the way we play the game, we're gonna win a lot of the games we play. And maybe that's getting in his head a little bit. But yeah, there were so many 3rd and longs, putting him in a lot of really difficult situations yesterday. And because we had good field position, I feel like they were just not trying to be outside themselves and just kind of take care of the ball.
I think he understands really well with what is expected from him and what he needs to do to win a game, and like the circumstances. He can adapt to almost any circumstance. Last night felt like, defense is playing as well as it's played all year. He's not trying to be super extra or make the superhero play. He's just trying to take what was given, and had a couple of picks drop, but I think that's just kind of the way some things go sometimes. I still think he made the throws that needed to be made. He made, oh man, I cannot remember if this was the 3rd or 4th quarter, but he made a throw to Carson Brown that was just, the window was just as tight as could be. And I think he's found a lot of confidence in Carson Brown as maybe a 3rd option to go to, which is kind of nice, I guess. I think Iowa State needs that, down the stretch here. But there wasn't a point in time. I thought he made a couple of nice plays with his legs too. I don't think that was not, to me, that Rocco looked shaken or rattled yesterday. You've seen that a couple of times maybe this year, and last night didn't feel like it, at least personally to me.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. And I still think not having threes stretch, but he's definitely not. He definitely doesn't look scared of some of the windows he's trying to throw to. That's for sure. And I think getting the tight ends more active. It wasn't really something they had scripted yesterday, but getting the tight ends more active to make the passing game a little less predictable will really help him when it matters too. And I just don't think that was something they really needed yesterday. So I would look for that too, especially in this upcoming game.
Yeah, it's funny because I think I texted you last night and I was like, it was just kind of weird how the offense was moving. I said, I don't think we're running the ball really well. I don't think we're getting a push at all. I think that was maybe the middle of the 2nd quarter, maybe beginning of the 3rd quarter. I don't remember. And then the guy on TV goes, yeah, they have more rushing yards than passing yards to this point. And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't believe it. I guess it just kind of summarizes Iowa State's game last night, that just the offense was weird and clanky, but I don't know. I don't think there's much more to be said on kind of Iowa State's offensive performance last night. I think the shine needs to be more on the defense. Any more, I don't know, anything you want to put a bow on for the Kansas State game before we move on to our Big 12 title?
Not really. It was, like I said, it was good to see him get back to form and step up after the sloppy games that they've been having. I think that was definitely even though the offense didn't really shine, I think that's the best game that they've played in the probably last 5 games, maybe.
I think it kind of summarized Iowa State's season as a whole. It's really never been perfect, but each side of the ball or each aspect of the team seems to pick up the other slack for the most part. When the offense is clicking, it seems like the defense has been off in certain spots. I remember like the UCF game, in the first half of the Iowa game, offense was terrible. Second half, defense picks them up. Just like it's been hard to put 2 full halves together of both sides of the ball, but this team just plays for each other really well, and the offense plays for the defense plays for the offense. I feel like I've said that numerous times this year, and last night was just another example of that. I got to ask you, Justin, did you stay up and watch the BYU Houston game, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Was there at any point were you worried?
Not really. I was a little too excited off the win and a little too warm to really understand the stakes of that there. But even if Houston would have ended up winning, I obviously would have been disappointed. But my focus, and I think the team's focus too, was way more on just winning that game yesterday, because I just think that was a huge hurdle for the program to get over and just a really good way to cap off the season. So if we would have did our jobs and it still wouldn't have worked out, or wouldn't have made the Big 12, I wouldn't have been too shaken up about it. So I wasn't too stressed. There was a BYU chant leaving the stadium, going out the tunnel. Everyone was like exiting the field. Everyone was chanting BYU. That was pretty funny.
Just the way they about lost that game, lost my mind. A botched punt, fumble on the 4-yard line going in, just a couple of things like Houston's moving the ball, and it's like, whatever, man. Like that perfectly summed up how Iowa State got to the Big 12 title.
Yeah, and you couldn't have a better summary of what Big 12 after dark has looked like this year.
That's very fair. All right, let's take a quick break. As always, we will get to our Big 12 title preview here. As always, we're brought to you by our friends at No Rivals. Shop norivals.com using the code PTFS. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all of you guys tuning in each and every single week, listening to Justin and I talk Cyclone football. The growth we've made this season has just been a ton of fun. And obviously the run Iowa State has made, it all makes it that much more special. And hopefully we have a couple of more previews to give you guys before this season's over, and some big ones. But nothing is bigger than Saturday, Justin, as I have to check here, as your 16th ranked Iowa State Cyclones are taking on your, I believe, 12th ranked Arizona State Sun Devils. This is again recorded on Sunday night. This is the AP poll. Before we get into all of that, I have to say it, because I have nothing against Arizona State. Them getting jumped by Alabama in the AP poll.
A joke.
A joke's an understatement, Justin.
How much did they win by yesterday? 40?
49-7. They were up 35-0 at half, Justin. They were 9-point favorites.
Yeah.
Alabama was 11-point favorites. They turned it over 4 times. If Auburn wasn't,
they thought they could sneak. They thought they could sneak that up there this week, so you don't make a big deal about it when they get in next week. But that's neither here nor there.
So, Arizona State fans, before we get into all this, we are on your side in that regard. I had to say that. I'm over it. Again, I'm over it. Just let the play on the field kind of speak for itself. A lot of people are regarding this. This is basically an elimination game, Justin. Your Big 12 title winner gets a college football playoff berth. Not sure what it looks like yet, as in maybe a first 4 bye. Maybe it's a 12th seed like they've been putting us out as the last couple of weeks. Nonetheless, if you're in, you're in, and you make do with what you got. But huge one for Iowa State. The Arizona State Sun Devils have been, I guess, the Big 12's Cinderella darling this year. A team that is 10-2, as playing their best football as of late. Again, they won I think it's the Territorial Cup against rivals Arizona on the road at Tucson, 49-7. Just buried Brent Brennan's crew. This was actually on right before the Iowa State game. So for Iowa State fans who sat at home and watched the game, you hopefully watched this team just a little bit. I think everybody is finally realizing how special this Arizona State team is. Sam Leavitt, the quarterback there, the Michigan State transfer. Everybody knows about Cam Scadaboo, the star running back in college football. I think this is America's running back, maybe outside of Ashton Jeanty, just because of his play style. And one of the hottest names in the coaching world right now in Kenny Dillingham. I mean, he's my Big 12 coach of the year. There's no doubt about it. The job he's done this year, bringing them from basically dead last preseason all the way to the number 1 team in the Big 12 right now. It speaks to just a coaching job that he's done this year. I got to give another shout out to our comments here where he said that they, we can say that they forked the living daylights out of Arizona. That's pretty good. If you're watching us or if you're listening to us on Spotify, this is why you got to watch us on YouTube, because we get great comments like that. Justin, what is your first initial impression of Arizona State? And I guess I got to ask you, how many times have you really kept eyes on this team? Because this came out of nowhere, to be honest.
I mean, I watched that. I guess we can go right to it. I watched that Texas State game, was the first eyes that I had on them all year, which is so funny because that was like one of the first like Big 12 games that we were watching at the earlier start of the season. I remember texting you about it, and we're like, damn, can you believe this Arizona State team and this Scadaboo guy? And I remember you texting me like, yeah, definitely not a team Iowa State would want to see this year. Good thing we don't play them. And I just remember brushing you off and being like, that don't matter. Why would we play them? And here we are. And I think, I mean, we're all tied for records with BYU and Colorado, but I think Arizona State's probably had the best resume of any Big 12 team this year. They've played the best. And that rushing attack that they have is definitely going to be an issue for us.
Yeah, Arizona State with just quickly remembering their schedule off the top of my head. Obviously, they went on the road, beat Kansas State pretty handily in that football game in Manhattan. Obviously, beat BYU in that awesome game 2 weeks ago. Throttled Oklahoma State on the road. Like the Texas State game, that was honestly one of the more underrated games of the year. That was a great game if you watch that on Thursday night. But this team really feels like, to me, has been under the radar up until Kansas State. And when they beat Kansas State and they got up, 21-0.
That's when people started taking them serious.
And then it was like, I think we forget Arizona State has a shot to get to the Big 12 title. And then they had, I think, was it BYU the next week or the UCF? I can't remember off the top of my head.
UCF was before Kansas State. And I think that was the win that kind of started to turn it around for them, because I've got the schedule in front of me.
Sure.
After that Texas State game, everyone's like, ooh, maybe Arizona State will be for real. And they lost to Texas Tech right away. So I think everyone kind of forgot about them until, that UCF, Kansas State, and BYU stretch there really kind of opened everybody's eyes to them.
Also, got to give another shout out to Scott in the comments. He says, "Go Devils. Really excited to play Iowa State. We plan on coming out there next year." I have to double check. Are we hosting Arizona State next year? Scott, I appreciate the comment. I'm trying to live in. I
believe we are.
I believe we are. That is exciting, actually.
I look at all the road games.
That's
what we don't play them at, because I wanted to go down there next year for that game, but we will have to wait a little longer for that.
Scott, make sure you give us a shout if you do make it to Ames next year. And I'm going to say 75% chance we make it to Tempe. I think it's in 2 years. Definitely in 2 years. I'm
sure that stuff's going to change.
Yeah. So let's get back to the game a little bit, Justin. Biggest thing, honestly, while they had such a good win yesterday, and as far as I know, I tried to do as best research as I could. The Jordan Tyson injury, I believe, is massive for Arizona State. For Iowa State fans, this is basically Jaden Higgins being out for the season. He was seen yesterday in a sling. Unfortunately, was a little emotional on the sidelines. So and I think he even posted something on his Instagram story today. It appears he's out for the year. He was playing like the best receiver in this conference the last few weeks. He led the country, I think, in receiving yards the last 5 weeks. This feels massive for Arizona State, and it feels even bigger than Jaden Higgins going out for Iowa State, because you still would have Jalen Knoll. And I look at Arizona State, and right now I have some questions just thinking about who maybe is going to be the number one option on Saturday for them now. To my research, no Arizona State receiver had more than 5 catches in a game or over 60 receiving yards in the last 5 games, just because Tyson was like 12 for 178, 8 for 148. He was Sam Levitt's go-to guy, and for good reason. And Justin, I think it's pretty comparable. We can kind of you watch Rocco Becht all year and how comfortable he is throwing the ball to Jaden Higgins. Like, it's hard to imagine like Rocco not having 9 on the field, just because you look like pre-snap read. You're looking towards your guy every single time. And now Levitt's got to adapt to that in just 1 week.
Yeah, I think that's massive for Iowa State. I mean, yeah, I like the way you put that in comparison to like how we are with Higgins, and I guess we got Knoll too, so that helps a little bit. But yeah, if one of those guys were to go down, I would be in shambles. So I can't imagine how they feel about that, because I'm looking at their stats here. It looks like so Scadaboo, I'm sure we're going to touch on him quite a bit. He's their second leading receiver, obviously. Their third leading receiver, it looks like Xavier.
You can give a crack at it. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce it. It's bad podcasting on my end.
I'll call it Gilroy.
There you go.
Sure. He's got 291 yards on the season, so that's definitely going to be a huge advantage for Iowa State. That if helps their offense be a little more one dimensional. Planning for Scadaboo and that offensive attack that they have, it'll be really interesting to see how Levitt can handle that. If we can continue to get pressure like we have been, on how that's going to end up for their offense.
So we always do, Justin, we highlight players to watch for this one. Seems pretty easy when you're highlighting Arizona State, but if you do live under a rock, who is Cam Scadaboo? Well, he's probably just the best running back in all of Big 12. He's 6th in the country in yards per game. The one thing that encourages me a little bit about Iowa State, obviously with the Tyson injury, that helps, but Iowa State has seen 7 of the top 20 rushers now in college football, Justin. I named them earlier: Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, Taj Brooks, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, and now Cam Scadaboo. So Iowa State has seen a plethora of really good running backs. That doesn't mean Iowa State is good at stopping those really good running backs. Honestly, their best game was against Giddens on Saturday. Otherwise, I believe the rest of those guys I just named all got 100, 150 yards on their own. So we know Iowa State's inability to stop the run. So you got to think what Arizona State's main focus is probably giving the guy that ball 25, 30 times on Saturday. I would have to imagine, unless they get down double digits, which I don't know if I necessarily see either.
Yeah, which honestly, from the Iowa State perspective, obviously he's a great player, but I think that's going to be something good for Iowa State, because I just like the idea of an offense being a little more one-dimensional, even though if it's passing or running, like giving Heacock a whole week to game plan around that. We know how good he's been at adjustments over his career at Iowa State. I think that could be something that could be really beneficial for us.
And then obviously this is all going to start with quarterback Cam Levitt, one of the best young quarterbacks in this league. He's going to be, when we do a Big 12 preseason preview next year, Justin, just like quick glance, thinking about it, he's top 3 probably for me going into next year. I would even probably put him ahead of maybe Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht, Jalen Daniels, like just to name a few, just thinking on the top of my head of who's going to be back next year. He's definitely going to be up there. From the games that I've seen, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this league at extending plays. You wouldn't maybe think of it right away, but his ability to run the football is what makes him so special. He won that Texas State game early in September with his legs. And that was the first time I was like, man, I didn't really pay attention to him and pay attention to him at Michigan State. And I was like, I did not think he used his legs as much as he did. But we know Iowa State's ability to be vulnerable, I guess, with a good running back and mobile quarterback combination. So I think, again, they're going to have to keep the corners on their heels just by maybe some of their read option stuff and having those two being really good at running the football. And then that might just scheme up your receivers open, and you might not have to worry about your best receiver being out. But on the other end, he's really good at throwing the football. He's 17th in the country in passing efficiency. So he's gotten a lot better down the stretch. He's taken care of the football really well this year. And honestly, Justin, if they didn't have Jeff Sims against, I think it was Cincinnati, this team would be 11-1. And honestly to me, Greg, I'm not ESPN. I'm not SEC propaganda. If this team were 11-1, they would be in the playoff no matter what going into this one.
I would think so. Going into a conference championship game, you can't really, that's different conversation. I don't think teams should get punished for losing a conference championship game, but that's a whatever. Yeah, as far as Sam Levitt goes, pretty big surprise for him coming in this year. I don't think anyone was anticipating him to have the year that he's had. And like you said, takes care of the ball really well. And that's something that's been a real big thorn in Iowa State's side on the defensive end. And I know yesterday Avery Johnson had a lot of pretty good throws, but I know him and his receivers also didn't connect on a lot of their receptions, which really helped us out. I think if Levitt's kind of on the ball and they're a little more cleaned up than K-State was, I think that could be a whole new issue for Iowa State's defense, as good as they did look yesterday.
Well, I'll say that too, because that's a good point. I thought Johnson yesterday had not all the time. I did think we brought good pressure, but there were at least 5 or 6 good opportunities where he had a really clean pocket. And I do think because of the weather, like he just wasn't able to connect on some of those throws. The tight end wasn't able to squeeze. Like the ball had to be a rock yesterday because their tight end.
I think the secondary was all over him too. They weren't tough catches. I mean, they weren't easy catches that were dropping, but we did benefit from a lot of missed catches there.
What came to mind is I just feel like if Levitt gets those opportunities, obviously in a dome controlled climate on Saturday, you're gonna give those up. That's just kind of my worry. All right, we will get into some of the keys to the game, but obviously, lastly, we got to highlight their coach, Kenny Dillingham. I think he's 34, and he's one of the hottest coaches in college football right now. Defensively, like what I'd say about their team, they're solid. Like they're top 40 in every statistical category. They're just a little lesser than Iowa State in some spots. They don't turn the ball, or they don't force you to turnovers as much, but they're a solid defense, and they're kind of another bend, don't break for Iowa State. So their work's going to be cut out for them. This team, lastly, has scored 21 points in the first half of these last 5 games. I said they're playing their best football right now, Justin. They scored 21 points in the first half these last 5 games. Let's get into the keys to the game. Let's do it. And that one for me, Justin, it starts right there. Starts with the fast start. You got to limit the fast start. You got to fumble in the first possession of the game last night against Kansas State. Just try to limit them going down the field and getting 10 yards a pop and just put a huge drive together right away. I think that'll set the tone and the confidence for Iowa State. That's the first key for me. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, as always, this Iowa State team loves to kind of play like the game script style of football. So, I mean, continuing to get pressure on defense is going to be a big concern for me every game. But I also want to see us be better on first and second down. We were pretty bad on third down yesterday, and I think that's just because of how bad we were on the first 2 downs. I thought a lot of our plays were really predictable, not a whole lot of passing. And, I like when we run the ball. I like getting the running backs going, but I do think other teams are going to start planning for that a little more, which we've kind of seen towards the end of the season. And I would just like to see us spread it out a little more, because I don't know if you can go into depth much on their defense. I personally don't know a whole lot about their defense, but if we can get Higgins and Knoll both going, get them going early, I think it could be a big problem for them.
I would just say that the defense for them is, personnel wise, it's just a good overall defense. Like, they don't give up a ton of yards per game, but this team is a little bit vulnerable in some spots. But like Kansas State ended up getting their yards against this football team, but it took the second half and it took this late surge of comeback. Like if this defense figures you out, like they'll expose your inabilities and some of your deficiencies on offense. It's not like, this isn't like UCF or Oklahoma State, or I think this defense is even better than Kansas. And Kansas at times made Iowa State uncomfortable, right? Just because of the offense putting the tempo, putting the pressure on Iowa State, and then that defensive line got its confidence and then got after Rocco Beck. So if you get down early and you let this defense get confidence against this Iowa State team, they'll take advantage of it. I think they're smart enough, they're good enough to do that. I think for me, again, another key is just to maintain drives offensively. Got to stay on the field. I thought last night that was probably one of the worst things that you did. And yes, in a good win, but you weren't able to stay on the field as much as you really hoped. And it felt like, again, they had one touchdown drive where they felt like they went the whole length of the field and put it together. And even in the second or in the fourth quarter, I'm trying to remember, did Iowa State not convert in the red zone at least once, right? I'm not just thinking that.
I don't remember off the top of I'm not sure off the top of my head there.
Let me go back and look. But that's one of the keys for me. What do you think? Do you got any other keys for the game?
No, not necessarily. I think that was a really good point. I mean, I think a really good way to slow down their offense is by keeping them off the field. And that kind of ties into my point before about Higgins and Knoll. And I think that's just a better way for us to have success on offense is going to your best guys when you need them. And hopefully we can see a little more consistency out of them. And I think that would then lead to confidence in Rocco and just kind of help the team a lot that way instead of kind of just bashing our head against a wall on first and second down.
Absolutely. Finishing drives. I was correct. Iowa State didn't convert on the 7. That was the possession that led to the safety. So they turned it right around again. Defense led the way last night. So Iowa State went 4th and out on that in the end of the third quarter. The very next possession, they settled for a field goal on a 60-yard drive. And then the last one where they got the turnover on down on Avery Johnson and we missed the field goal. So I think that was the most stressful part of last night was your last 3 drives, Justin, ended up in a turnover on down. What was it? A field goal when probably you should have gotten 6. I think that was the one they got the field goal on was the drop by Carson Hansen.
Oh yeah.
When
in the end zone.
When they went that pop pass.
Yeah, that was a great play call.
It was. And so Iowa State has a ton to look back on and think, man, like we could have closed that game out early in the fourth quarter last night, but let them hang around. So maintaining drives offensively. Lastly, for me, D-line has to have its best game of the year. I don't really need to elaborate on it. The D-line has been massive. The linebackers have been playing well. That's been the difference these last few weeks. So it starts with that. All right. Last prediction segment of the night. We're going a little long here, but we appreciate you guys tuning in. We have a great audience tonight from both sides. So we will get to the prediction segment. Make sure you let us know in the comments who you got, what's your score prediction. As always, you got to subscribe to us at Play the Fight Song. If you go 2 for 2, we'll get you guys a hat at shopnorivals.com. Arizona State fans, be bold, be loud. Let us know in the comments. What do you think your Sun Devils will win by? And maybe we'll get you guys a free hat at shopnorivals.com if your Devils can pull it off in Dallas on Saturday. Justin, little fun fact. Iowa State, or Matt Campbell in particular, is 5-0 against the Big 12 newcomers over the last 2 years, getting his most recent win over Utah.
There you go.
Give us a score prediction. Do the Cyclones get to the college football playoff?
Do you got the over-under in front of you?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Bad podcasting.
I believe the last time I saw Arizona State was plus 2.5. Looks like on ESPN.
It's flipped. Arizona State is 2.5-point favorite now.
Yeah. Oh, did I say that wrong? That's what I meant.
You said plus 2.5.
Oh, okay. Yes. I think that's the first time we've been an underdog since the Iowa game, correct?
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Which is kind of crazy. Which I thought we could have been an underdog yesterday too, and that line would have kind of made.
It came down to literally a pick'em. It was a pick'em. It was like -1 at kickoff.
Mm-hmm. But I just think looking at both of these teams, they're both kind of similar with how they got here, just kind of playing balanced, complementary football. But I think this Iowa State team is just a little deeper at some of the key positions and has a couple more ways to win. And for me, if I'm going to be making a prediction, I think that just makes me feel a lot more comfortable because I think Iowa State has more ways to win than Arizona State does. And I think that's going to lend to our defense having a little more success than maybe people are prepared for. So that being said, I would say probably Iowa State 27, Arizona State 24, which would be right around the over-under of 50 as well.
How many games have we predicted this year where it was like a 3-point game? I feel like 20. I feel like 27, 12, 27, 24, 24, 21. I feel like those are our most popular score predictions. You got to go out of the box. Like this is why you guys don't win free hats. You guys try to give these big generic scores. And last night you get to 29 points. Like that's just hard.
I just don't see any team really pulling away from any other ones, and especially in a Big 12 championship where nerves might be a little higher. I can see it being a little closer, unless you were about to tell us that you've got a blowout coming.
No, I do not. Especially when you're an underdog in this one. I will say I was honest about it. I thought I would have most likely picked Kansas State to win last week, but just there was too many outliers, too many different historical things on the line where I was like, it's all in Iowa State's table right now. Like they're going to go out and win it. This one now, both teams are quote unquote like team of destiny, Cinderella, whatever you want to call it. So throw out all of the underdog, stereotypes between these two teams. Both teams are playing with a huge chip on their shoulder. Justin, I can't explain it enough. The program ramifications of winning this football game for both of these schools. Arizona State was in sanctions and in probation from Herm Edwards just 3 years ago. You have an Iowa State team who's never been on the national spotlight like a college football playoff game would be. So both of these schools need this one really, really bad. That being said, I think this has the ability to be just an all-timer on Saturday. I really do. I get like TCU K-State vibes from a couple of years ago. I think this game is going to be fantastic, and I can almost guarantee I'll be in tears either way, win or lose. I said that last week. I can guarantee you that. Not after Saturday. No, not after this one. This one's different. So that being said, I think it's going to go down to whoever has the ball last. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hope the ball is in Rocco Beck's hands on that last possession because I've trusted him all year, and I think I trust him one more time to get it done. I got Iowa State winning this one 24-20. The Jordan Tyson injury really sways me away from taking Arizona State here because I'm really interested to see what that passing attack looks like for him. But we'll have to wait and see. I think Sam Leavitt is good enough to make do by himself with whoever you throw out there. And I'm really, really interested to see how Iowa State responds to Cam Scatterbo because this guy is going to break your teeth and run right through your nose. But I think Iowa State adjusts. I think Arizona State gets up 10-14-0. I really do. But it's just like the Oklahoma game, Justin. Just like the Oklahoma game back in 2020. I like Coach Haycock and the second half adjustments that they make. And I think Iowa State responds and gets it done on Saturday.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was rolling through the comments again before we get out of here. You can touch on some of these. Jimbo Jones says 34-31 ASU. Not going to be able to stop Scatterbo. And he thinks Leavitt's going to have a great night. This other guy, this guy's been a kind of a troll in the comments, but we're going to give him a shout out here. Dread Not Fear. BYU Colorado is a better championship game for the Big 12. Well, sorry to tell you, both of them couldn't win when it mattered most. He also said BYU will be in the playoff. I hope you're right. This is a Big 12 show. This is an Iowa State show, but this is a Big 12 show. We hope they all get in. Sorry, Justin, I didn't mean to cut you off. What do you got? Your closing thoughts on this?
I was just going to say, because you were touching on it a little bit there with how excited you are for this game. Does this game feel as big for you as the 2020 Big 12 championship game did? Because we were both at that game. First time Iowa State ever made a Big 12 championship, but it was during COVID. But it still felt like, even though we didn't have a shot at the playoffs, the ramifications of that game just felt kind of a lot larger than I feel like they do now. And I don't know if that's a 12-team playoff team or if I'm a little too close because I've gone to so many games, or I just want to know what you thought about that.
Maybe it's something you didn't like in your conscience think about, but did it seem bigger because there was an OU on the helmet versus Arizona State on the helmet in the new Big 12 now? It felt like a David versus Goliath kind of thing. 3 years
but
ago.
we had beat that team already in the season, and I fully thought we could have did it again. But it did still kind of feel like it was like an unprecedented underdog for us to be there. Where this year, if you would have asked preseason nationally, people wouldn't have said that. But it's just weird. I mean, I've gone to so many games this year, and like every single game prediction we have, neither of us have ever called for an Iowa State loss, and I mean, we haven't been that far off. I mean, we just won 10 games, and it's just, I don't know. It's a weird feeling, not something I'm used to. That's for sure.
I will say my prediction's out there. I already said it. I regret saying it that I think it's going to be higher scoring than 24-20. I don't see this one going under. If I had to redo it, I would, but I don't do that. I don't do takes backsies. So we're going to just stick with what we got. Yeah. that's kind of all I got, Justin, as we went almost an hour here. This was an awesome episode. We had fans from both sides chime in the comments. We really appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Sunday night hasn't hit you quite yet, Justin, but I know Thursday, Friday rolls around. The national media starts talking about this game. I think it's gonna get your attention going. I think you're gonna start getting the excited, nervous feel, I think, by Thursday or Friday, don't you think?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that's kind of how this last week kind of started to roll around for me too.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, make sure to check out our friends at shopnorivals.com. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We will be back with our live show at Play the Fight Song. We do our live college football show each and every single Wednesday night. We are breaking down all of the conference top previews. So we'll probably touch on this one once again, give you guys our predictions there. My name is Jake. That is Justin. Win or lose, we will be back next week to either preview a college football playoff game or maybe a future bowl game, but we will be back. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Like always, how I got to send us out. Sorry, it's not a Forks Up podcast. We'll see you guys next week. Go Cyclones.